Hello, all. Ken here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to another Water Soluble Wednesday. In today's Water Soluble Wednesday, we are going to be doing a little quick Christmas painting. I'm really in the Christmas spirit, so we're doing a Christmas cupcake. I am using the Artwell 24 tube watercolor set, which I have let dry down in a palette. There is a review for these paints up on the channel, so I will be sure to link it either in the video or in the video description, whichever one I can remember to do. And I'm painting on Artist Loft Level 2 Artist Grade 140-pound cold press acid-free watercolor paper, which I have formed into a accordion style watercolor journal that I made for myself here in the studio. I wanted a accordion style book, so those are the supplies I'm using. I'm using synthetic brushes to do my painting, but of course you can use whatever watercolors, whatever paper, and whatever brushes you may have on hand. They will all work. So what I've done quickly here is to put the shadow in under the cupcake. That is a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I went back in with sap green on the leaves, and then I took a credit card scraper in order to put the veining in. The icing for the cupcake was done with a mixture of cerulean as well as ultramarine watered down to make a light wash. The cake has a watered down layer of yellow ochre on it. The wrapper has a watered down layer of yellow ochre mixed with a little of the burnt umber and a little burnt sienna. And then the the cranberries, that's what they are, the berries on top. The berries on top have a very light wash of, I want to say that's rose madder on top, if I'm not mistaken. I could be, but I think it's rose madder. So I got all of that down, gave it time to dry, which completed my first layer. Now I'm going back in and adding additional color and saturation by adding a second layer. Now I'm using a number 2 golden tackline round synthetic brush in order to do my painting, because it does allow me to get into the little corners and cracks and to get some rather nice detail on something that I'm trying to paint. And of course, with it being a golden tackline brush, it's not going to carry nearly as much water as those that are meant to mimic real animal hair, like a synthetic squirrel or a synthetic sable. So it does help with the water control, which is something that you do want to pay attention to when doing a painting or illustration of this type. Now I'm going in and basically adding in secondary colors and adding in my dark shadows at the same time. So basically I'm just taking each one of those little fluted areas of the icing, laying down a second layer per se for the mid-tone, and then I'm going back in with much saturated color, more paint, less water, in order to do the shadows and the detail. As far as the wrapper, here I'm using pretty much the same technique as I did with the icing. I'm taking the color that I used to put down the first layer, using more paint, less water, in order to go in and paint on the mid-tones as well as the saturated shadow areas. So I'm just going to kind of work back and forth here, making the ruffles on my cupcake paper stand out a little bit more, adding a little depth to one side so that we can make sure the cupcake looks round. And then this also helps with the fact that most cupcake wrappers, if they're not a solid color, have a bit of transparency to them, and you will be able to see like the baked cake through the wrapper. So that's pretty much the things that I'm trying to paint in and emulate. I have told you guys before, I really like these paints. I'm a big fan of Artwell's 24 tube set as well as their 24 half pan set. They are a really economical brand of paint. They're really bright and vibrant and punchy. There's not a huge shift from wet to dry. Now, of course, with the tube paints, they will crack if you dry them down in a palette. You can offset that by adding a little glycerin to it. But if you order their 24 half pan set, you don't have to worry about them cracking in the palette. With that being said, although they do crack, I still put these paints well above your standard budget grade paint. As a matter of fact, I put them on the same level as Maylene Pretty Excellent, which is produced by AON Arts, the same manufacturer, distributor, and factory that produces the Paul Rubens, professional paints. So I would definitely put this on the level with those Paul Rubens student grade paints. Really enjoy painting with these. So I went in and I finished up some fluting. Now what I'm going in and doing is adding the shadow that would be on the cake from the icing sitting on top of it, and just adding in that cakey, crummy texture just to give a little bit more realism to the cake itself, or the overall cupcake. Then I'm adding more saturation into the bottom of the wrapper again, where you would be able to see that cake through the wrapper. Once I finished up with that, I wanted to go in and add some shadows and some more depth to my leaves. So here I'm using the sap green that I put down the original wash with. I've mixed it with ultramarine and cerulean in order to get a darker saturated shade of that sap green. And that's what I'm going in and using to put in my shadows, being sure to hit those areas around where the leaf meets the berries, as well as in the veining itself. I really love the effect of putting the veins in with a credit card scraper. That's a technique I picked up years and years ago from the Frugal Crafter, and it has served me very well over many paintings over the last few years. So that's a technique I say, give it a try. I think that everybody will like it. Now I'm going in with that rosemary, and what I did was I mixed in a little bit of blue and then a little of the sap green in order to darken that tone, since red and greens are opposite. They will neutralize each other, and I knew that adding that green in would help give me a much richer, more saturated, cooler shade of the red that I originally used. So now what you see me doing is using the gray that I mixed from the ultramarine and the burnt sienna, which I originally did the shadow with, and I'm going back in and adding in more shadows throughout the cupcake. Around the berries, putting on the little spot for the berries, around the leaves, adding in a little bit more depth, up under the berries where they touch the icing, the two different layers of icing where the icing touched the cake. And then I'm going to throw in some highlights, and that's going to wrap it up, guys. Hopefully you saw something you like. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Go ahead and share, because sharing is caring, and hit the comment section up to let me know what you think of this. Will you give it a try? I hope you do. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new or returning. Hit that notification bell, and be sure to check the video description for all of the relevant links. That's going to be the Facebook group, the most recommended product list, and Etsy and Patreon, where you can support the channel if you choose to. It's greatly appreciated. Just keep painting and crafting.